Instead of trying to change the white man in your mind, make you accept us, we change the mind of the black man and make him accept himself. And as soon as he accepts himself, he'll solve his own problem. He won't be trying to force himself into your factory and into your bedroom and into your kitchen.
With no education, you have neo-colonialism instead of colonialism, like you got in Africa 9, like you got in Haiti. So what we're talking about is there has to be education program. That's very important. As a matter of fact, we are so important for us that a person has to go through 6 weeks of our political education before he can consider himself a member of the party, able to even run down ideology for the party. Why? Because if they don't have the education, then they're nowhere. You dig what I'm saying? They're nowhere because they don't even know why they're doing what they're doing. You might get people caught up in the emotionless movement. You understand me? You might get them caught up in because they're poor and they want something. And then if they're not educated, they want more. And before you know it, they'll be capitalist. And before you know it, we have Negro imperialists.
Peace and Black Power family. It's your Harlem educator, author, and activist, the Black Liberation Coach, Brother I.J. Taimba. I just want to take a few moments to welcome you to Harlem Liberation School's YouTube channel. Harlem Liberation School was started in 2016 by myself and my queen. And we basically saw that there was a lack of foundational black political education going on in Harlem. We're not going to get up from under white supremacy without knowing how oppression works, how it affects and impacts in our community, the ways in which we internalize our own oppression and engage in self-defeating behavior and thinking, and our socio-political movements and our very important individuals and organizations throughout our history who played a leading role in fighting against and resisting and disrupting white supremacy. So Harlem Liberation School was founded as a black political education center for adults. Because education is not just relegated to children. Adults need education. It's those of us adults who maybe when we were kids did not get that foundational Africana studies of black political education. The things we need to know to be free and to fight effectively for our liberation. And so that's what we're here to do. We hope that you will come through, check us out, look at our videos, like them, comment on them, and share them. Peace and Black Power. Peace and Black Power families. Brother I.J. Taimba from Harlem Liberation School, where we teach black people to wake up, clean up, and stand up, in the words of our beloved ancestor, Brother Malcolm X. Family, today is the second episode in a Hip Hop 50 series that Harlem Liberation School is sponsoring through our YouTube channel. The purpose of this is simply that some people are recognizing this as hip hop's 50th anniversary. I would probably disagree with that because I know that it comes largely out of the South Bronx, and where they're saying it started with Herc and them is definitely not the South Bronx. Up there, Sedgwick and Cedar. I'm talking about places like in Brook Avenue and Leggett and St. John's and, and Beck, South Bronx, 149th Street, 3rd Avenue. In the event, what tends to happen as a genre blows up or a product gets larger is that it becomes corporate and some of the narrative changes. The history changes, why it's important changes, the reason it's valid changes, depending on who you talk to. I wanted to make sure that we had a living document from grassroots people, from ordinary people, teachers and preachers and students and, workers who may or may not have participated in one of the different sort of expressions of hip hop, but maybe just love hip hop and hip hop had meaning to them and hip hop helped them get things together. Hip hop helped them make sense out of things going on in the world and pointed them in the right direction so that our voice will be documented along with all the celebrities and the rich folk and all of them as well. Today, in our second episode, we are really pleased and honored to have our good brother, Bernard Creamer. He's coming. I believe he was raised in Chicago or born in Chicago, and he's now in D.C. He's a principal, he's an educator, he's an activist. He really wrote a really good book on hip hop, which we're going to get into later in the broadcast, called Who Stole the Soul? The Weaponization of Hip Hop. So the brother's going to come with a critique It's just not gonna be all lovey-dovey with hip hop. I'm sure he's gonna have some critique, right? And that's a good thing. Let's bring our brother on. Okay, make sure you unmute, brother Bernard.
Unmuted.
Peace, brother. How you be?
And I'm great. I'm great. Good evening to you, man, and thank you for having me back on the platform.
Absolutely.
Remember, I'm back in that classroom, and I ain't no principal no more, man. I let that ride.
All right. you back? Yeah, man. I know that the classroom is no joke, but you know what, brother Bernard? The classroom. I tell people all the time, not from an arrogant point of view, but the classroom is the trenches, man, because you meet everybody, right? Yeah, right or wrong?
Yeah, I enjoy it. I prefer to be in there right now. I can do what I want to do as a history teacher. I'll just say that. And I think I have more of an impact as opposed to having somebody to push these directives on teachers and all of that business.
All right. I'm going to just put a few things on the bottom as reminders to people to, if they have not already, if you're watching, our audience, please subscribe to our channel right now. If you're watching, we definitely appreciate that. I'm going to have a few things scrolling on the bottom as the show continues. Make sure you check for the ticker at the bottom. And we're going to begin. So for those watching, this is very loose, casual. This is not no meet the press type of broadcast. We just want to know what black people and brown people, what's your impressions of hip hop? Why do you love hip hop? What has it done for you? That type of thing. So I think the first question, Brother Bernard, is simply, what is your first memory? If you could go back and say, man, what's my first memory of hip hop? Hearing a song or seeing the dance or graffiti. Can you take us through that if you can remember?
Yeah, it's easy. I don't know if you remember those real cheap Tone Master tapes from back in the day, the cassette tapes.
Yes, sir.
One of my guys came up on one, and it had Ice-T, Eric B. and Rakim on it, and a whole bunch of artists that came out around that time. And I was like, what is this? Well, I remember us riding in the car, somebody's bucket, going to a party. And I just remember listening to it. It was 60 minutes of just pretty much just raw hip hop from Ice-T around that age again. And some New York artists too. Like I said, Eric B. I forgot who the other artists were, but KRS-One was on there too, Boogie Down Productions. I remember My Philosophy and some other stuff was on it. But that was my first memory, man. It just kind of like shocked my mind. I'll just say that, man. I was sold. But yeah, that was it. You know, just being introduced to the music with my homies or whatever, because we got it a little bit later than y'all, of course. But once we got a hold of it, man, I mean, we were just shopping for those tapes. We had one radio station that was kind of underground here, WHPK in Hyde Park in Chicago. And they used to play all that underground stuff. So on the weekends, we was checking for everything new. But my first introduction to artists that I fell in love with was Ultramagnetic. And that was probably one of the first purchases in terms of me buying a cassette tape of definitely Ultramag. Cool.
Wait, now, Brother Bernard, wait. Because a lot of people watching don't know nothing about what we're talking about right now. So we got to we got to connect some dots. Give them one of the songs from the Ultramagnetic MCs that you was bumping back in the day.
When I Burn, Cool Keith.
Okay.
Easily.
And what did you like about Ultramagnetic?
The lyricism, the beats were banging. It was clear. Like, I don't know who did their production. I forgot. But it's somebody that's real popular, man. Don't get me to just dropping names, but definitely the beats and definitely the lyricism. Cool Keith was my guy. Said G was tight too, but Cool Keith was that dude in terms of rhyming fast and rhyming slow, coming with the different styles. You know, he had like it was kind of a freaky style or whatever. He stood out from the rest of them, but that was my jam. I was just rocking them the other day.
Yeah, Ultramagnetic was fire.
Yes, sir.
Do you have like a favorite individual artist that you rock with? Okay, for instance, who would you, if you gave us your top 5 of all time, brother? I'm putting you in the hot seat. I know that's a tough one.
I should have been ready.
Who would be your top 5 individual artists?
For the better part of my younger years, it was Nas easily. Definitely Nas. Nas is incredible. KRS-One, incredible. Lupe Fiasco, incredible. Black Thought, incredible. Busta Rhymes, incredible. And I got to give some love to, I'm sure it's a whole bunch of other ones that I love too, but Uh, man, I gotta give me two more. Uh, plug, plug two from De La Soul, and then my man
Ah,
that just passed away.
rest in power, the brother. Yeah.
And another one that just passed away too. Goodness gracious. With the map, MF Doom.
You pick some heavyweights, brother, and I think that conversation can go on for years because that's relative. You know how that goes.
Yes,
Some
sir.
people, beauty's in the eyes of the beholder. But you pick some very good picks right there, my brother. Now, I'm interested to know, how would you say hip hop has helped you in your life in practical ways for people watching who think that music is just music? And I believe it's so much more than that. Culture can really impact our thinking and our politics, our finances. How has hip hop moved you and helped you in your life in real ways?
It's funny you asked, man. I listen to a lot of our older music, like the Earth, Wind, and Fires, the Curtis Mayfields, um, the Isley Brothers, Harvest for the World. And you remember, you listen to the music. Number one, is soulful as I don't know what. Like it lifts you up, it elevates you, it inspires you. But then the lyrics were very intentional in terms of putting you in a place, man, to just want to be better. You know what I mean? Want to be a great African. And so I never got away from that. With hip hop, for me, um, it was definitely KRS One, and even Nas back then. Not so much today, but definitely KRS One for the better part of my childhood, high school. Groups like Brand Nubian, De La Soul, Poor Righteous Teachers. They were trying to teach us. And I was a gifted student, but I wasn't reading no books. I could pass an Iowa test, I could pass a standardized test, but I wasn't that smart. I wasn't reading nothing. So for them to introduce me to knowledge, to Africa, to African heroes. You had KRS One, Boogie Down Productions. He was dropping Kwame Ture on his CDs.
Yes,
Um,
sir.
and so you know on the intros and then the interludes and stuff like that. So that kind of made you want to seek those people out and listen to what they was talking about. So that kind of served as hip hop served as the foundation for me in terms of my consciousness, in terms of wanting to be a better African and know about myself.
That's what I'm talking about. It's making me think of when I was in high school, and it was a very interesting high school experience. We were right in the Bronx, off the concourse. Those from New York know about Cardinal Hayes High School in the Bronx. And I had two people there that would go on to become somewhat of hip hop legends themselves. And I would be rhyming. I had me and his brother named Javal be battling dudes in the cafeteria. And one brother named Fat Man Scoop would be hitting the table. Another brother named Joe Kirkland, whose DJ name, legendary DJ Diamond D, down with the Digging in the Crates crew, had me over at his apartment in the project, sometimes after school making tapes.
Nice.
Right? Diamond actually said he's going to come on and do one of these broadcasts with us.
Sweet.
But those were memories that are golden to me because it was a time when it was innocent, wasn't paying no bills, all these responsibilities, just going to school, rocking with the brothers, And I think of the skill set that hip hop helped me develop. Being fearless in talking in front of people, being competitive when I needed to be, like in a battle, being poised and confident. Would you say that hip hop, as you look back, Brother Bernard, would you say that hip hop instilled certain qualities in you or helped you to even appreciate, let's say, certain qualities?
Okay, well, shout out to Diamond D first off. That first CD is a classic. Goodness. But in terms of qualities that were instilled, I would say for me, just pride, self-esteem, feeling good as an African or whatever, and just seeing our culture being embraced like it was as a kid, and not really having a political context. But as a kid, to see hip hop blowing up the way it is, I mean, for me, that was like us blowing up, Black people blowing up, Africans blowing up around the world. That's ours. We can hug that. And this is our contribution. And again, that's with the lack of political context, but just a sense of pride, for me. I mean, even today, I sit in my classroom for the kids, whatever. I think I was playing Del the Funky Homo Sapien, and I put on Master Ace. Had the kids listening to it, and just you could tell like they, you see their heads nod. I mean, that's natural for us, but they could actually, for them to be able to listen to it and not have to hear cuss words and some real MCs, some real lyricism, and some dope beats, and just to feel good. I mean, it was like you said, it was party music. It was a real good time. Like we went to the parties, whatever. We had a good feeling. We look forward to hearing some hip hop being banged out by the DJ. That was around the time, we just started to chase women. So our thoughts on women, our ideas about women and how women should be approached would be in shape back then. And that'll lead into another conversation, of course. But it was just a good feeling. And even today, I think of me and a lot of people in my generation, we still say that our childhood, like that, we can't say anything bad about our childhood, about our youth. Because I mean, we had that as a backdrop. I had house music too, of course, but hip hop, it defined a lot of nights, a lot of parties, a lot of relationships.
Agreed. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now, I'm curious to know, do you remember the comments of the adults let's say when you were a teen, do you remember what the adults were saying about hip hop? Like the 40, 50-year-olds? Do you remember if their commentary was positive or was it cynical about hip hop?
I think for my mother and father, I mean, my father was a music head. And so I sitting in his basement or sitting in our basement, listening to him play his records. A lot of that stuff wound up in hip hop, especially with De La Soul and groups like Tribe Called Quest, DJ Premier. They were using all of that stuff. And so when my parents heard that, they knew all that music already. And so it really wasn't far-fetched for them. And they had Gil Scott Heron. They had that, you know what I mean? So it wasn't that much of a transition for them. Now, when we got to NWA and it just got, quote unquote raunchy, and a lot of those street elements started to come out, they didn't have a tolerance for that. And they definitely didn't want to hear it blasted throughout the home or coming out of my car when I was pulling up, in front of the crib or whatever. But beyond that, my parents didn't really complain about it. I never really heard too much negativity about hip hop. I mean, it was, and I'm not gonna start knocking the new music, but it was really soulful. It was really soulful. I mean, it was good music. They took a lot of pride in the stuff that they took from way back and the stuff that they pieced together to make these beats, whatever, especially a group like Tribe, like De La Soul. I mean, it was great music. So I can't really think of nothing bad you can really say about it, even as an old head. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir. Now, I had a different experience with my parents. My parents were like, that's crap. That stuff is garbage. My father worked some job downtown. He said, hey, man, he tossed this it probably was a cassette at that time. He tossed the cassette to me. I said, what's this, Dad? So it's some dude that he does some custodian work in my building. Says his name is Dana Dane. Check it out. I was like, Dana Dane, yo, I'm bugging out. That's Dana Dane. My father's like, man, this stuff is crap. This not going to last. And he would say the only thing good about it is that it uses what he called the good music from his generation and before. But what a lot of adults didn't get it. And I think that's important for those watching, because for those of you who have kids, like myself, you're going to get into these sort of generational cultural sort of back and forth with kids, and they're bigging up a type of hip hop, and you're like, man, that's garbage. And it's kind of similar. Mm-hmm. It's kind of generational. Every generation wants something that's theirs, right? And I thought that we saw hip hop as ours, something that our generation created for better or for worse, and it was our genre. Our parents had their thing, and this was ours. So let me just stop real quick, Brother Bernard. See, we got some comments here. Oh, that's my Queen Bee in the building. She says hip hop gave our generation permission to use our voices individually and collectively. Prior to that, we were supposed to be seen and not heard. Wow.
Indeed.
Definitely in my household, that's how it went. Sister Veronica watching from Jackson, Mississippi. Shout out to the Black Liberation Movement. I believe you guys are coming up with your upcoming Building Power Summit in a few days. So peace out to Brother Patrick, Los, Mary Sunshine, Quincy Denise in Mississippi. And yes, so the sisters are building. Sister Mila Renee's in the building. We just had her on talking about physical fitness. She's giving the greetings. Peace, Sister Mila. All right, so we got some people in. All right, so let's get back to this. Now, we talked about how hip hop helped you in your life. And I'm interested to know, do you have any critiques of hip hop? Now, for those of you watching, Brother Bernard isn't just a brother who has critiques in his head. He took his critiques and wrote some of them out in a book called Who Stole the Soul? The Weaponization of Hip Hop. And he's showing you the book right there. Very good content in that book that I think you all, if you can, definitely purchase it. I'm going to put on the bottom how you can get it. Brother Bernard, what would you say are some of your critiques of hip hop? And take us through it so people understand why you're saying that, what you're saying.
All right, well, I'm gonna start. We were just talking about the music and how it was how your father referred to it as soulful. And it was soulful because they borrowed from our people, from our family, from soul music from the 70s and 80s. But eventually, as Premier alluded to in one of his records, they started cashing in on those samples, the European record owners or record industry owners, and they also started cashing in on hip hop overall. And so things started to change. It wasn't so much ours anymore. When you have groups like Tribe being swept under the rug, Public Enemy, Poor Righteous Teachers, all of a sudden KRS-One, all of a sudden we didn't hear them. And that wasn't an accident, that was intentional. And what became the main course was the element that the so-called gangster element, because it ain't too much gangster going on with that stuff. There's a lot of actors or whatever, but gangster rap, it basically serves as a main dish, and everything else got pushed to the side. And so in terms of my critique, I understand how capitalism works, and the rich will always exploit the poor, and that's happened in every single genre historically, starting from the beginning on up to hip hop. Hip hop wasn't the first genre or cultural component that we owned or had that we used, whatever, that was exploited and used to make a whole bunch of money. So once they got their hands on it, they realized it wasn't going to be a fluke. They basically found ways to co-opt it, to bastardize it, to corrupt it, and to basically make it something where everybody could get a hold of it. And not only could everybody get a hold of it, but everybody could do it. Lyricism started to fall back. It wasn't a priority that you had to be able to rhyme. It wasn't a priority that you had to have a DJ in the background. They got rid of the DJs. Breakdancing, the artistry, all of that stuff got wiped out. And now you just got an artist, and not necessarily an artist, just somebody that's willing to stick to the template and spit whatever ignorant biz the previous disposable artist spit to whatever the producer on that label laid down as a beat. And so all the beats are starting to sound the same, and all the artists are starting to sound the same. But again, I put that out there because a lot of our artists, thankfully, are coming out and they're actually voicing the fact that they're being exploited, that they've tried to come out with some conscious records. And the industry was like, no, we don't want that. We want N-word and B-word. But I will say this, though. At a certain point as an artist, you gotta have some integrity, and you gotta start seeing your community, and you gotta start loving your community. How much money do you need? And you got to realize that you're being exploited. Once you realize that, then don't go back and make another album calling our people N-words and B-words, telling our kids they should go kill each other. We should refer to our women as B-words. That we should be rocking all of this nonsense, these European name brands that we don't know nothing about until one of them brings it up to us. All of this alcohol and these drugs and stuff. They have a responsibility. But again, I put the bulk of the weight in the industry's laps. But we also have to hold these artists accountable as well too. But again, like I said, hip hop is not the first genre to be exploited by these Europeans, and so it's just getting the taste of what's been happening for over a century. It's just getting a little bit. Hip hop is easily the most powerful genre that we've had. And I would say powerful in terms of how much money it's made for a whole bunch of white people. That's the real big thing, because it's very few rappers, black rappers, whatever, that's become millionaires, whatever, rapping. It's about a handful of them, but it's a whole bunch of Europeans that have gotten extremely rich exploiting our artists. And so it's gotten big in that regard. And all of these shows are rewarding and stuff. And like my boy Quabin, who's on there right now, you got the Image Awards rewarded, the NAACP, you got the Grammys rewarding it. But now we got them, it's to the point where they're rewarding the most ignorant of our artists, the ones that are willing to take the most money to be the most ignorant and to do the most damage to the psyches and the subconscious of our children. They're getting rewarded. All the money is going their way. How come Wise Intelligent, I don't care about billionaires and millionaires, but if you're talking about paying somebody, Wise Intelligent should be paid. KRS One should be paid. Even, what's his name, Talib Kweli, Lupe Fiasco is easily the best for me. I'm going to say this is my opinion. The best rapper out right now, Lupe Fiasco. I've heard some of his recent stuff. Mural, check that out. If you ain't heard Mural by Lupe, that's an incredible piece of music. But pay them. But anyway, that's my critique of it. It's basically gone the same route as a whole bunch of other genres. And as much as I hate to say it, man, just looking at history, it's been rendered disposable. Hip hop has been rendered disposable. So it's on life support. And that's to be honest with you, to be able to watch what's going on with it. You don't have to know how to rap in order to become a rapper. So
yes, sir.
You know what I mean? That's literally the core of what hip hop is, the artistry, the lyricism.
Yes.
You ain't got to do that no more. So they basically just made it a disposable whatever. But the good thing about us is we're going to create something else because we always do.
That's right. And I noticed that Brother Kwabena is on. He says he has a comment there, teach comrade. And Brother Kwabena, possibly yourself and others are involved with a Clear the Airways movement where they're holding hip-hop artists, radio stations to task for the messaging. So I think that's a perfect segue. Peace, Brother Kwabena. Thanks for joining us. It's a perfect segue to this question. Do you think that right now, if you looked at hip-hop as a general trend, do you think hip-hop is political enough, Brother Bernard, from where you sit?
No. And shout out to Quabin again and the Clear the Airways Project and also the Nubian Leadership Circle. I'm gonna let Quabin leave something in the comments, but they have something going on in Atlanta. I think the end of the month he's gonna have to leave those details for you. But is hip hop political right now? Absolutely not. And that was the whole purpose of the Europeans taking it over and doing what they did with it, sucking the politics out of it to kind of mess up the political orientation of our youth, where they're not politically oriented. Wise Intelligent talks about it, where he mentioned that during the time when Rodney King was beaten by the police, we reacted, we responded the way we were supposed to respond. And that was violently, basically rioting and doing what was needed, what was necessary to express our rage. You're not going to just beat on our brothers and we're not going to react to it. 2023, babies are being killed. Black babies are being murdered on a regular basis. Black babies, infants, women, our elders are being murdered on a regular basis, and there's no rational response to it. And it's just kind of scary to look at it, So in terms of it being political, like we've actually heard artists, I forgot which artist it was, but they asked them, do you have a responsibility to your neighborhood, to your community? And the artist basically responded, no, that ain't, no, it's just about getting money. And I mean, that pretty much summed it up for me. But again, how does the African proverb go? If the youth don't feel the warmth of the community, they're going to burn it down to feel that warmth. And so we're dealing with that. What have we done in terms of setting up institutions to politically orientate our kids and to have them where they'll reject taking money or large bags of money to say ignorant stuff on the radio, towards our people, targeting our children? What have we done to politically orientate them? I mean, it's a lot of us. No, it's not even a lot. There's a few of us out there doing the work, but there's not enough of us out there doing the work because we got too many of our kids that are willing to get that bag of money and do whatever with it to exploit our whole community. So in terms of it being political, no, it's not political right now, but I play some of that blame in our laps as well, too, the adults.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that, Brother Bernard. Those watching, I'm speaking with Brother Bernard Creamer. He's headquartered in the D.C. area. He's been a principal for many years, classroom teacher for many years, putting that in the trenches work. We salute him for that. And he's written a book, which you see on the screen, Who Stole the Soul? The Weaponization of Hip Hop. And he's showing it, the cover to you right now. We're going to strongly suggest, I'm going to have this up for a large part of the show. If you can go and if you have the wherewithal, please purchase that book. It has good content and it's relevant. Everybody's talking about the birthday, which I have to say that's in question. That's suspect. Hip hop is older than 50 years, fam. I can tell you that for a fact. That's a fact. But I guess they had to give it some type of reference point. So no problem. Shout out to her. Shout out to Zulu Nation, Black Spades, all of the original B-boys, B-girls. Shout out to the 5% Nation of God and Earth, who are very important to the foundation of hip hop. We're going to have my brother Shaheed and Allah is going to break down the role of the 5% Nation of Gods and Earths. This is why everybody says peace. This is why everybody's standing like this with their feet at a perpendicular. They're getting it from God body. So we're going to get into that at a later show. Family, please support the book. And if you haven't, please subscribe to the channel. Brother Bernard, I'm curious, what meaning does hip hop have for you? In the movie Brown Sugar, they was like, when did you fall in love with hip hop? I'm not going to say it like that, but I'm curious to know, what does hip hop mean to you and why do you feel that it's important?
Hip hop was one of my first teachers. And for kids that grew up like myself in schools that you didn't see too many conscious black teachers. I had a couple of black teachers, but I wouldn't consider them conscious. They were good human beings, but they wasn't kicking no knowledge to us. I would definitely say that hip hop was my first conscious teacher. As a child, being in high school or being a youth in high school, it was the how can I put it? The soundtrack to my teenage years. That's how deep it is for me. It was literally the soundtrack to my teenage years, and I can appreciate the balance that hip hop offered for us. It was conscious, it was party music, and we had the grimy element. You know, you had the street element or whatever. We could appreciate that back then, but it wasn't what was dominating the airwaves. And in reality, even today, the vast majority of our children are not gangsters or little girls that run around calling themselves B words. That's the vast majority. And so for them to basically, these Europeans to basically mainstream that and target our kids with that, I mean, it's disgusting. But it's purposeful and it's intentional to give the impression that that's the majority of our children. That's what the majority of our children are doing. That's the majority of our people are doing. Propaganda. But again, for me, man, I'm still married to hip hop. Our relationship is a little bit estranged right now. Eventually, we probably gonna wind up parting ways. I still know artists my age, like Race Bannon in Chicago. I still mess with Lupe, like I said, and there's some young artists that are coming up that I add to. No Name, and a few others, Ciroc that I listen to on occasion, but they're keeping it alive. But it seems like everybody gets sucked in, even our conscious artists. Even they're calling us N words and B words now, even our conscious artists. And so gradually, and I'm aging out too. I'm 50 something years old. And as a hip hop activist or whatever, there's some things I just don't want to hear in the music no more because I realize what it is. And I don't have any tolerance for us being calling N words and B words, which is why I really don't even listen to Nas no more. I still love Nas. I love Nas. Still one of my favorite artists, but I can't ingest it no more. I can't digest it. Every song calling us N words and B words. It disagrees with my palate at this time, for lack of a better way of putting it. But he's still cold. But like I said, man, I'm still married to hip hop. I listen to it every day. I still look for it, and I still try to push it to these kids because they need to hear it, just like they need to hear Earth, Wind, and Fire, like they need to hear the Isley Brothers. They need to hear all of that music to know what it was. They don't need to. I want them to understand, at least have the wholeness to understand that what is being offered now is not what hip hop used to be, and that hip hop, like a whole bunch of other different genres, and even like our mass media, TVs, movies, our artistry, or whatever, all of it gets dumbed down because we don't own it. We don't own these platforms, and they target us with it in a way that makes us easy to manipulate, easy to control, and to maintain the status quo. So I just want our kids to understand that, and that's kind of what I push to them. In addition to making them listen to my old music all the time.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You know, I was thinking as you were talking when you said that you're still married to hip hop, but you're feeling a little estranged. It reminds me of a brother that comes right from your neck of the woods, Chicago, brother, when he was known as Common Sense, and he made a classic record, man, full of metaphor called "I Used to Love Her," and he's talking about hip hop. And then he got with Erykah Badu, and they made another. She made kind of a different. I forget what it was called, "Love of My Life," which was also a metaphor for hip hop. Yep. And he talks about, he does a brilliant job of really kind of detailing the trajectory of hip hop. It started off this way and was kind of fun and uplifting, and then the gangsters got it. It is really, really good. And how she's trying to get her money up and all this. Very interesting. Now, you are an educator, so you're right in the trenches in the classrooms. Can you help people understand from what you see, how is hip hop right now? I want to say impacting young people. How does the hip hop that's being played on the radio, on the internet, on YouTube, do you think, from what you see, how is it manifested in their behavior, their values, their priorities?
Qualitatively, it most certainly is. And shout out to Common as well, too, man. I don't know how I didn't put him on my list. So now I got eight artists on that list instead of 5. But one correlation I'll give you, man. When these Cardi B's and Nicki Minaj's started coming out, and then you also had these TVs, quote unquote reality TV shows that are not real, with these hyper violent and hyper aggressive women pulling each other's hair out and breaking bottles on each other's heads. When I first started teaching and working in administration, most of the fighting in the building was the boys. The boys was fighting all the time, and the girls were screaming or whatever, trying to break up the fights with their boyfriends and stuff. The last 10 years, with the onset of what I just mentioned to you, the vast majority of the fights, especially in neighborhoods where we're dealing with concentrated poverty, and the residuals of crack and all the stuff that it did to us, the majority of the fights are girls, little girls, ripping each other's hair out, trying to kill each other. Like if you don't break up some of them fights, little girls are going to the hospital in intensive care. That's how intense the fights are. And when you sit down and you talk to them to mediate whatever they was doing, they don't understand why they hate each other so much and why they were going at each other so violently. Like they can't even process it. Because it'll be over the smallest thing that'll set them off when they're ready to kill each other. But if you're listening to it every single day coming in your earbuds and you see it on TV, that my reaction should be to tear this girl's hair out or to rip her eyes out of her head, what are you going to do as an impressionable kid? I mean, that's literally what it is. Just like these young men now, they don't fight anymore. They shoot each other and turn on all their music, and all the music's encouraging them to shoot each other. And so I've seen that correlation. I've lost, especially in the last, again, 10 years of my career, a lot of young men to gun violence. First 10 years, maybe one, maybe, if that. But the last 10 years, I don't even remember most of the names. I don't remember most of the faces. But when people I got to be reminded, like, oh, yeah, I did have him in my class. Yeah, I had him in my class, too. Yeah, I had him in my class, too. But at least 3 dozen kids that I've lost to gun violence. And so, yeah, I'm definitely seeing the effects. I work in a Montessori school right now in Prince George County, Maryland. And most of those kids come from semi-affluent homes. And so they ain't built like that. They don't see none of that in the streets. They got 2 and 3 and 4-car garages. But they come with the lingo. And they come in trying to throw up all the gang signs and all of that business. And I got to check the hell out of the dudes. Like, dude, that ain't even who you are. And I know where they're getting it from. And they always trying to show me, Mr. Creamer, check this out. It's almost like exotic to them when they show me these videos on a computer screen from YouTube, with some artist basically getting his Chief Keef on. They're enamored with it because they don't live that life the same way that these white kids are. They don't live that life, so they get a little peek into it. It allows them to be fake gangsters or whatever for a hot second or whatever. But it's kind of like me watching Star Wars as a 7-year-old. I could pretend to be Luke Skywalker and get all excited about it. That's kind of why kids are, especially the ones, the affluent ones, but they're pretending. and that is becoming who their heroes are. In Chicago, where there is gun violence, their heroes are the ones that are shooting, the ones that are toting guns. Those are becoming their heroes. So I'm seeing it firsthand. So that's kind of like, whew, you talk about something that gave me fuel to write, to put that pen to paper. I'm watching it happen right before us.
And I'm listening to you, brother Bernard. It's making me think back to the 80s, and this group of some of the baddest hip hop artists of that day, right around maybe blocks away from where I live in Harlem, did a very famous video called Self Destruction. And it was part of the Stop the Violence movement that KRS-One kind of coordinated. It makes me think that maybe it's time for another such movement. A Stop the Violence move, like a whole movement in which the different hip hop artists, maybe some of the R&B people get involved, producers get involved and spread this message in the schools, in our community playgrounds, in our community centers, in our places of worship. Like, yo, for real, the fratricide has to stop.
Yes,
right?
So yeah, it has to be a movement. Like you said, the schools, the community centers, and some of these older artists who served as role models need to grab some of these new artists and teach them and bring them in and have them come into the classrooms with them and apologize and then teach our kids. Our kids have to be literally politically reset at this point because they've been sent off for like the last 10, 20, 30 years, just like we were. We got sent off too. I can't stand in a conversation full of grown men where they're not addressing a sister as a B word. And we say that B word without even thinking about it. I don't anymore. It took me 3 years to stop using the B word and the N word in reference to our people. But that has to be intentional. And I realized that it took me 20 years to learn all of that stuff. That sister, look at that B word over there. I had to unlearn all of that stuff. And I'm still learning. You know what I mean? I still have different ways, and how we saw women that was programmed into us. And even just stopping to use the B word or whatever, I still have to continue to deprogram myself.
I like your transparency. Those watching, we are works in progress, man. That's a fact. Yeah. And I bear witness to the same. Brother Nnamdi, ex-revolutionary, has a really good question. He says, what are the implications of hip-hop propaganda for social and political movements, and how does it affect activism and social change?
Good question.
How would you respond to that?
It's funny, when you read some of these books with Amilcar Cabral, Thomas Sankara, I'm trying to think of another one, Paul Robeson, all of our luminaries, even the artists, the Bob Marleys, the Nina Simones, the Fela Kutis, they all talked about culture. They all talked about using culture as a weapon, using music as a weapon. All of them did that. And so they got quiet and hushed up in how Europeans do their thing, but they all talked about it. So it's all right there. I mean, it's like, I don't need any convincing that this music serves a purpose and that it's been repurposed for us to basically create what we see today. Because during the 60s, whatever, I mean, that's some of the most beautiful music. If you go back and listen to that the movement music, some of the music during the 70s, whatever, I mean, that music inspires you to want to do stuff, to want to stand up, to stand with your back straight, march, do whatever, with your fist up. Today, what does the music make you want to do? The propaganda that's being targeted to us. I asked my kids, just like Lauryn Hill asked us, if music is supposed to inspire us, what does this music inspire you to want to do? And I ask each one of them, nothing. You know what I mean? Get money, be a gangbanger. It's propaganda, and it's very intentional. And so if we have music that was basically like it was halfway during our generation, or I'll say mostly, because KRS-One was most of what I listened to. I know the lyrics to all KRS-One albums, so I was listening. It was getting heavy rotation, but I was being taught. And so imagine if all of our kids were being targeted with Boogie Down Productions or Lupe Fiasco today, or artists like Ad out of Chicago who's teaching his ass off. It's a breath of fresh air. Imagine if our children were being targeted with that. Our kids are still gonna love hip hop. And a part of the thing with hip, they want to tell us that our kids won't listen to it unless it's ratchet, and that's a total lie. All they're being offered is that buffet of ratchet artists. And if you offer them a buffet of positive artists with the same good beats behind it, they're gonna listen to it, they're gonna process it, they're gonna ingest it, we're gonna start seeing the changes. But That's not what they're gonna do. They're not gonna do that for us. We know that. That's up to
You
us.
already know it. That's right. You know, I was thinking when I have these type of conversations with people, Brother Bernard, what tends to come up, the historians, they'll say, well, you know, hip hop this is not new. There's other times in our history where there was a mainstream accepted music and there was a kind of a fringe music or genre that wasn't accepted. So they'll point to something like R&B and blues music. And if anybody knows anything about blues music, I could play some music right now that'll make everybody watching this gasp when you hear them talk. I mean, it would blow your mind, the words, the language, and what they're saying. But the difference is that blues music was played in juke joints, family. Blues music was played in fringe places that kids didn't have access to. Hip hop is everywhere. And that's one of the key differences. So your parent would have had to take you around a record playing the blues or to a place which you couldn't have gone to after hours to hear the blues. So for those people who bring that argument, no, this is different. The genre has permeated every sphere. It's commercially viable on TV, internet, on games. It's everywhere, movies, right? So we have to really take this more seriously. And for those who don't know, hip hop was started by people many of whom were in street organizations or gangs. Many of them were robbing people and were doing all types of, debauchery. And they saw this as an outlet to express themselves and to get away from that life, right? And so many of the gangs started to protect their neighborhoods in the Bronx. It was crazy in the Bronx. So they would started to protect. And this hip hop was almost like the outlet. Instead of people battling with guns and knives, they battled with words or they battled with dance. And so to see where it started and to chart now where it is reminds me of the crack era where there was this beautiful sister on the block. You was young. You said, oh, she's so beautiful. I would love to talk to her. And then crack hits and you see her now, emaciated, a shell of her former self. That's how sometimes I look at hip hop metaphorically like that. Like, wow, it was something that was really special, and it still is, but it's emaciated, it's hollowed out now. Because as you said, Brother Bernard, the artistry, the craftsmanship doesn't seem to be on a pedestal like it used to be. I remember writing books and books and books of rhymes and practicing it. And it was really something you took seriously, whether you were good or not. That's what you did. And it seems like they're getting people off the street, giving them I could be wrong. It's just grab people off the street, give them a contract ahead, man, spit. It just seems, it's something, man. It's to see that,
Yeah, the A&R
really
job
something.
to go on YouTube and just pick the most ignorant artists. This video, they got a whole bunch of guns. They point them at each other. They got masks on. Let's sign them. And when y'all talking about B words and N words and killing each other, bet. They go $250,000. You got a one record deal, and we're done with you, and we'll get the next artist. As soon as y'all start asking for more money or whatever, we'll go get the next one. And that's pretty much where it is right now. But like you said, I mean, they pretty much flipped the script on us. KRS-One, even his first album, Criminal Minded, it talked about the gutter elements. It talked about the streets. 9mm. He was talking about all of that. Just Ice. All of them artists talked about the streets, but you couldn't hear it on the radio. Like you just said, it was never on the radio. You had to go find that stuff. Even going into the 90s with Mobb Deep, I couldn't hear Mobb Deep on the radio. I had to go find that. But now, like you said, it's pervasive. It's on the radio. 9 out of 10 songs on the radio is negative B word, N word, go kill somebody that look like you. And like Kwabena talks about a lot too, at these basketball games. You can't even go to a professional basketball game or NFL game, and they're playing that music. And you see the NBA players and the NFL players, all of them talking about N-word this and B-word that. I just came across some video today with some rap artist, and I want to say he was in Asia somewhere. And he's walking down the street talking about, oh, I'm in this Asian country. And all the kids knew who he was. So they're giving him shouts out. And one of them said, my N-word. And he was just like, yeah, 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 my little N-word.
Mm.
And I'm just like, wow. So all over the world, I mean, it's being reinforced that we are N-words, and we fought so long, and we still fighting. To even for among ourselves, because whatever we do, they're always going to see us as N-words. There ain't no changing that. I'm not even trying to change that. But among us, we have to convince ourselves that that ain't who we are. We got to convince our kids that that's not who we are, so they can be better. But we at war. I mean, that's the nature of it. So we fight till we out of breath.
Yes, sir. Now, as we come down to our last 10 minutes, Brother Bernard, could you kind of fill us in on what led you to write the book you wrote that a lot of people on the thread are saying is an excellent book and it's a must-read book? What led you to that?
Again, watching the devolution of our kids in these schools is a big part of it. And I had been doing, I had pieced together like a PowerPoint presentation even 10 years before I wrote the book that I've been presenting to my students. The principal or the assistant principal will be thinking I'm in there teaching about Thomas Jefferson, Thomas Hamilton, and George Washington. And I'm in there running them, I'm running them slides, them media literacy slides, them propaganda slides, while also sliding in some brothers from the neighborhood that were speaking on it. Dr. Lance Williams from Chicago, a couple of brothers that own black businesses in Chicago. I'm doing my thing in my classroom, but ain't got nothing to do with the curriculum that they wanted me to do. But a major part of that was talking about this music because myself, Quav, and a few others that already started doing the activism on the street, even to the extent of sitting down with them Clear Channel clowns. Just telling them y'all gonna have to stop. But just I'm inspired by watching our kids. I want our kids to be better. I don't want our kids to die. And you get tired of seeing it. And when you're reading the books and you understand how important our culture is, how important hip hop is, you understand that our kids, this is their music. This generation, they love hip hop. They don't really care nothing about no R&B. It's hip hop. And so I use hip hop as a tool to convey the information that I need to convey to the youth, but also the adults that are interested in being politically reoriented. Because in the book, I also break down capitalism, global wealth distribution, labor exploitation, and all of that stuff too, in addition to hip hop. But I just use hip hop as a backdrop, the history. I talk about World War II. I talk about how the poor are being exploited. I talk about all of that stuff in there. But as long as you use hip hop as a backdrop, it makes the world easier to teach these youth.
Yes, sir. I found it interesting, Brother Bernard, that hip hop is a musical genre that you in our middle-aged years love, all the way down to people in the 60s started it, and that are roughly 60, 70 years old started hip hop. So all the way from the 70-year-olds all the way down to little kids. That's a powerful genre.
Yeah.
Very powerful. If you think about all of the age groups and generations that it impacts. And hopefully your book will play a major role, Clear the Airways movement, Harlem Liberation School. Hopefully all of these community organizations and institutions will help our people get back on track, because your book argues that hip hop has been weaponized against us. And you know what? Maybe we could weaponize it for us again. It could be our weapon against foolishness and bad messages. So, man, we want to thank you for being here, Brother Bernard. And before we leave, I'm going to tell people, if you have any questions or comments, put them up. Are there any things that you didn't get a chance to say that you would like to say?
Well, again, thank you for having me, man. I appreciate it, man. And I appreciate the platform. I appreciate the school. What you and your wife are doing is much needed. Thank you. Again, I just want to shout out Clear the Airways Project, my brother Quabana, who just lost a family member. So my condolences to them. Send that brother some peace. But basically, the organizations that are doing the work, man, the black media channels that we have, shout out to them all. Because I mean, I see us awakening slowly, and that's the result of your platform and other platforms gradually waking our people up. We got to keep going, because we're literally at war with the most powerful propaganda apparatus in the world that the world has ever seen, that exists in this country. That's what we're going up against to save our children. So we cannot stop. You know, we got to keep going. We got to catch these kids young, and we got to basically provide the foundation for them to not be swayed or not be impressed by this nonsense that they're being targeted with. But I appreciate you plugging the book. Please grab the book. I'm telling you, I'm teaching some stuff in there that a lot of people, mostly adults, are saying thank you. But they're buying classroom sets for their kids as well in some of these schools. So I definitely appreciate that. The work continues.
Thank you for that, Brother Bernard. I want to thank all of you watching and listening. We want to remind you that Harlem Liberation is going to be doing this series all the way up to December for the rest of this year. And I hope to be able, some of you watching have some things you want to add about hip hop, what it means to you. Hit me up on the inbox at Facebook, and let's see if we can schedule it in. You don't have to be rich or famous. You just have to be a black man or woman that has something to say about why you love hip hop and what it means to you, you know, and maybe some critique of hip hop. All right. With that said, thank you, Brother Bernard.
Thank you
for coming through. We're gonna stay in touch. We're probably gonna have our brother back, so don't even worry about that, because he's been on before. We'll probably have him back. Thank every one of you here. Please remember, if you have not yet, click that subscribe button. Help us to reach more Africans and new Africans. And family, have a beautiful evening. Peace and Black Power, family.
All right, bro.